thank you for coming to the third Been There, Done That interview. We're with Steve and Kathy Carroll. And how long y'all been coming to our church?
I'll let her answer this one.
Since 2012.
2012, so 10 years or more. So that's great. Yeah. Well, anyway, I've got to know y'all through church functions. I thought, man, what a great couple and a great story. And so we'll start off with you, Steve. How did how did you catch this great catch?
Okay. I was working at a Christian camp, and one of my duties one day was to go to the airport and pick up a young lady who was flying in. Knew nothing about her, and it turns out who it was.
Yeah.
So I was just a benefit of the job.
Being a taxi, yeah, yeah. Well, did he get the door for you? Put the luggage in and everything.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and did y'all have a great conversation on the way back? And
It was a one-sided conversation because he's from Louisiana and I couldn't understand him.
you couldn't understand him, huh?
I really struggled to understand a lot of what he was telling me and all about camp, and welcome to the camp. Because it was, 20, 30 minutes back to camp. And I was doing my best, but it was a little awkward.
Yeah.
But it's okay.
I'm from Louisiana, and she's from Florida, which is a non-English speaking country.
Both have swamps.
Both have swamps.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
we do that, and gators.
And so was this college years, career years? What age were y'all when y'all were meeting each other?
I had been coaching for several years and had got out of coaching. We'd had a kind of a political deal, and I just kind of was disgusted with it. So I got out and was interning at a Christian camp for a year.
Yeah.
And
so you were working at camp?
I was working at camp, and I was probably 24-ish, 25, something like that.
Yeah. And so did he ask you out to dinner or?
No, it started out just hanging out. We had duties at the camp for weekend because we were the work crew. And so we worked together. And then when we had spare time, we'd just walk and talk.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah. So I was out of school. I had graduated, but I had come home to my home in Florida to have back surgery. Happy graduation from college. And
man.
it was, it was very, very life-changing in that they gave you this list of you will not, you cannot, you should not.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what do you mean? So a pastor friend directed me toward this same camp. And so I went out there just kind of needing to get away from home, needing to have some time to think, where's life taking me now, and that kind of thing. So one of the things I had to do a lot of was walk.
Yeah.
And so it was perfect.
So you were walking and he was walking with you and y'all are finding out about each other.
I had been there for a while that year and was walking with they had a thing called Carpenter's Workshop. And so one of the things I decided to do, we didn't have TVs out there, not many phones, like 2 on the whole thing, other than office phones. And so I decided one of the things I want to do, because we're working with these folks, is just go out and walk with them.
Yeah.
One every 2 or 3 weeks and just get to know them, who they were as people, because they were from all over the country. And some of them even out of the country. We had a couple from Nigeria. And so just in the course of doing the walks and talking, just got to know each other and then decided, we'll talk some more and just continued from there.
Yeah. So what made you think, I'm going to marry this woman?
After we had been walking and talking and working through a lot of just who we were and all that, I think one day it just hit me. I had looked for a lot of certain qualities in a person, and one day I just kind of went, this girl has a lot of those qualities, and it wasn't exactly how I thought it would be, but I went, wow, this is kind of interesting.
Yeah, God has
So
his way.
let's see where it goes from there. And that was, just one of those gotcha moments where you go, I need to check this some more and see.
So how did he ask you?
Oh, that was down
Much
the road.
later,
Yeah. I had been looking for a job, but it was an economic situation where a lot of the jobs I was looking for were not being funded at the time. So it turns out that LSU had an experiment station in his little tiny hometown. And so when I went by there, I had come back. I'd flown home to get my car, driven all night, got back to his hometown. He had ended up taking a coaching job back in his hometown. So at that time, we went out to the experiment station. His dad said, they've got an opening. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
this is too tiny. I mean,
Yeah.
St. Joe has no traffic lights. It doesn't even have a caution light.
Yeah.
It just has a right turn at the levee and, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And so, but it was a perfect fit. And so we both left camp a little bit early, didn't finish the whole summer out there. And then I took the job. He came home to coach. And somewhere in there, it was before football started. But his qualification was that I had to wait to answer him until we had waded through one football season. I had no clue. I love sports, don't get me wrong. I ran track and cross country. I loved football, that kind of thing. But I had no idea what it meant to be a coach's wife. And so I'm waiting until football is over before I give him my answer.
That's some wisdom there to see if you wanted to live in this lifestyle.
I told her, I said, you need to go through one of these because she didn't have a background in it, and it's a tough life. Puts a lot of demands on the wife. It does the husband and the family, but a lot on the wife, and she'd never been through it. So I said, let's go through it and see what happens. And then we had a Midas. It was my first year as a head coach, too. We had a Midas touch year. Everything we touched kind of turned to gold. We ended up winning the state championship.
Wow.
And
So you go on, you have a long football season.
we have a long season, but she thought they all turned out like that. And I didn't tell her any different, and she ended up marrying me.
Yeah. That was a good year.
While the fish bite,
You
go
win
ahead
state, and you get married, man.
Yeah, it was. It was a really interesting year. God really blessed us that year.
Yeah.
He really did.
We had
So with coaching, there's probably had a lot of moves in your life.
We have had
not really.
we haven't moved as much as you might think. We've been very fortunate. We were married for 3 years, and we decided at some point we're going to start having kids, and we decided somewhere in there. Kathy had been raised as be a professional, have your job and all that, but as we got to talk about kids, she went, I want to do a stay home. And we went, well, we're not making enough money in Louisiana to do that, so we said, let's go to Texas. And God really blessed a long, interesting process on that. But God brought us out here to Castleberry, Fort Worth, and I was with a very Christian staff. It just a whole different story how that happened, but I ended up with an all-Christian staff. Just a wonderful place and wonderful guys to be around. We were there for
15
years.
Yeah.
And it thought we'll do this and go for 3 or 4 years and start looking for jobs and da-da-da.
Yeah.
And ended up 15 years in a school that was just really met up a lot of the things that we wanted to do and ministries that we wanted to have. So
Yeah.
we took it and ended up there. And
So how many kids do y'all have?
2
officially.
and a bunch of adopted ones,
Yeah.
as far as just
Yeah.
within the church
Be-
and that kind of
yeah,
thing. But
being-
2 boys.
We have
The coach and
Matt
everything, you
John.
probably
Hundreds of them like
father
that.
figure to
Yeah.
many.
We have a lot of kids that you kind of take them on as your own, and,
Yeah.
and that's one of the real blessings of it. That you all the time bump into kids that you have coached, and that's just it's a responsibility, but it's also just a huge blessing just to get to be part of their lives.
So in marriage, y'all been married how many years now?
Working on 42.
She does all the numbers.
42. Yeah. She's the numbers lady, huh?
She's the numbers
Because
lady.
you've been in research and always done research, and so you like to probably document and everything. I'm married to a woman who
Occasionally
likes to
I
document.
totally forget and have to go count on my fingers.
Yeah.
Sometimes, I get caught doing the math wrong.
Yeah.
Get my phone out. Just let me do that.
Yeah.
But no,
So
we're working
in
on
these
40.
42 years, what are some of the things that caught you off guard, or some of the struggles that you thought, man, I didn't see that coming? I'm glad we walked through that and got through that, but it was tough. And
Well, I think one of the things that helped us through a lot of them was we were a little bit older when we got married than most. We weren't in the 21, 22 range. I was, I guess, 25 or 26, somewhere in there, and Kathy was a few years younger. But I think we had probably a little bit more maturity Uh, and I think that helped us as we've been through marriage. Sometimes the moves, because you're changing environments totally. Um, but I guess probably our biggest challenges that we talked about some the other day when we decided to have kids. One of the things was Kathy wanted to stay home, and so raising kids on a one income thing has always been a real challenge to us.
And then when your kids end up having special needs, literally, because John is a special needs student, still is, and then Matt had his own things that he needed. So when everybody else is, building equity in a home and buying new cars, I'm working in between drop off and pickup, and every dime that I'm making is going to tuition for both the boys.
Yeah.
And that went on for 5 years.
Yeah.
And it was necessary for both of them. And I will tell lots of people that I have two only children
Yeah.
because they both had needs that went different directions.
Yeah. So you had, like everybody in some ways, like my three kids, none of them were the same. But they all have the same parents, but God made them uniquely individual. And they're very unique and touched by God in that way, even though my kids come from me and Sarah. Same with your situation. Your kids are different.
Very different.
Matt was a very, very, very bright guy. He had him in public school at a place, and the teacher, who was like a 25-year veteran, I mean, a very, very good teacher, she told us, "You've got to get him out of here. He's getting bored with school at an early age." So we were able to work out some ways. We got him into a very good private Christian school, and he had like teachers with master's degree teaching him third grade, master's degree in science, and he just fell in love with learning even more. And
So what does Matt do now?
He's a banker now.
He's a banker,
Yes,
but he was always sharp cooking.
yes, very much
yeah,
so, and
yeah.
and needed the challenges. He was one of those kids that you couldn't let him be bored.
Yeah.
And so that was one.
Well, now was he an athlete?
Yes, he was all regional defensive end, played here at Stephenville, and did a pretty good job for what he had.
Yeah.
He was.
And then your other son?
John was different from the get-go, and that's okay. I did Mother's Day out, I took care of kids in the nursery, but I knew when John got here that he was very different. But this is in the early 90s, and there was no internet. I couldn't Google anything. We didn't have cell phones. So our resources were limited to just our pediatrician. And I mean, if I could have been there almost every day, I might have, just because there were so many questions and so many things that we didn't understand. And two of our best friends are both doctors, and we raised our kids together. And so
Yes.
they watched John, and they couldn't put a finger on what was going on with him either, which made me feel a lot better, but it still didn't answer the questions that we had. And it took us until John was almost 5.5, and a lot of haggling with the insurance company to get him to Cook's to get tested. And ultimately they came back, and this is before they used the terms on the spectrum, referring to anyone that has a variation of autism. They tended to slot kids, either this or this, mild and high functioning versus very, limited. And so, but he was 5.5. That's a long time to go without any kind of interventions.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew that there were things going on, but you just had to get creative.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they pointed us in the direction of Child Study Center, which is a school in downtown Fort Worth. And so that's where John ended up for 4 years. And they told us that they had never met a child who tested quite the way John did. His ability to his performance IQ versus his verbal IQ. There was a huge gap. And in 4 years, those teachers, they just closed the gap. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall to see how the magic happened.
Yeah.
Because we had interaction with his teachers every day. But I never really saw what they did with him. The best way I can explain how, and this is, John's brain is incredibly smart. I mean, he's a brilliant young man. But an autistic brain takes a totally different approach to learning. So the best way I can explain it is, if you're going to teach an autistic child to read, the letters all have names. So the letter L is L, but it also has a sound when you start phonetically sounding out your words.
Yeah.
And in an autistic child's brain, you can't have both. You
Yeah.
can have one or the other, but you can't have both. And so I really feared that he would never read.
Uh-huh.
And somehow they worked this.
And they did
Oh yeah.
miracles with their education with him.
Yes. And they had a lot of people. It was a small class size, and that kind of thing. Now, did we have our days? You betcha we did.
Yeah.
We had meltdowns. We had struggles.
Yeah.
But the good part was that they were able to give me feedback every day so that I would know what to do at home with him to help him conquer these things.
Yeah.
And it was slow and, 3 steps forward and 2 steps back type thing. But the Lord really blessed him with amazing teachers.
Yeah.
And by the time we left, because Child Study Center only went to a certain grade level. And so by the time we left, they had pretty much gotten him to grade level.
That's great.
So when we moved from Fort Worth to Stephenville, I had a folder that was 1.5 inches thick, but I also only had just a few things that I was asking from the school in terms of accommodations.
Yes.
And it was amazing.
That's great.
And,
He's blessed to have a mother and dad who just acknowledged and wanted to help.
Well, the biggest thing I think we realized early on was that, there was a difference there, and we didn't know what. And there were so many times that we went, all right, Lord, we don't know what we're doing. The doctors, even the first time we walked out with the performance thing, that said, if y'all find out any information, let us know. Yeah. And we're kind of going, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on a new range.
So sometimes parents can feel that way with their children is they're in an alone territory, but you're not alone with God, and He's there with you.
And that's the biggest thing that we've seen is that neither one of us were, why? That just wasn't part of it. It's okay, we got the issue, let's deal with it, let's go with it. And God, a lot of times we didn't know, all right, what should we do? So what do you want, God? And we'd make some calls that we didn't think it came out of our brains, but they turned out to be, later on we found out, that's what you needed to be doing, and that wasn't the norm of the day.
And you got both boys being great citizens for our community and productive, and so that's a blessing there.
Well, we were, like I said, there's eating a lot of peanut butter and driving old cars, but when you look at your kids, that's really the thing that we wanted, was to turn out two good guys that would be
You're sacrificing for the future.
Yes. That's a bigger investment than whatever material things.
That's tough to do as a married couple when finances are tough and kids have medical issues and things. That's a tough thing to walk through.
Well, and we looked at it though, and one year Kathy had been doing medical research in Fort Worth when we first got there, and we sat down, we did all the figuring and calculations of if we both work and put the kids in daycare or something. And when we put pencil to paper, all of a sudden it went, we will make $20 more a month if we both work than if she stays home with them. And we go, we won't have to worry about who has to take days off from the job. And we went, $20 is nothing.
Yeah.
And it really, we kind of did that. And sometimes the finances, we had our pastor's wife was an accountant, and many years in, we're going, boy, I don't know how we're getting by. So we asked her to look it over, and she came back and she goes, on paper it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I guess God doesn't read our paper real well then, because it's always worked out.
What to encourage couples, especially, with the been there, done that type series, is for, telling young people this is part of the unity and growing. This is what marriage really does look like. And for people in the middle section like me who's got kids at home, what encouragement words could you say to them, like, about marriage? And, what do you think you would say?
You got anything?
You never give up.
Never give up.
I think
Absolutely. Yes, you tie the knot and hang on, but you seek out. Now we have the internet. Not that the internet's the end be all end all, but you have to understand how life was when you didn't have that quick resource. But you seek out people in similar situations. You look for people who are doing things well, and those mentor type people. We had some people in our lives in Fort Worth that were instrumental beyond words,
Yeah.
that poured into our kids, regardless of how John was doing, or regardless, they would take Matt and do stuff separately, to encourage him and that kind of thing. I will also say, being at church, lots, Sunday school, vacation Bible school, get your kids involved. God did an amazing work in both the boys. Matt, it was a lot easier because his cognitive ability was right there up front. But John's progression of understanding the sacrifice that Jesus made was nothing short of miraculous.
Wow.
And he got it. And so I would say never underestimate what the Holy Spirit and what God can do in the life of even a child that may seem to have some disabilities or some cognitive issues. You just put it out there and let the Spirit do the work, because John was young. John was really young. The baptism was a little challenging because he had tubes in his ears, and he wasn't very fond of holding his breath, and it was pretty interesting. But it was still, the pastor was just a blessing, and he rolled with it, and we've never looked back. That part has has been a part of him going forward through, and that's where, praying with him daily, not just at home, but doing devotionals and things like that. But as he grew in his understanding of the Lord and that kind of thing, we watched a major transformation when he got to Tarleton.
Yeah, that's great.
And he'd never been, his desire was not to go spend the night with friends, that kind of. He was a homebody. Homebody. Until Paradigm decided that they were going to go to Joplin for their spring break and do repairs after the tornado. And he came home and announced to us that he was going.
Yeah.
I was more terrified than he was, because I knew that the ramifications of being out of pocket, and I thought, there's no way I can go get him. Yeah. I can't go get him.
But God was doing something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he subsequently went to California with them twice more.
Yeah. That's
and
great.
His desire to serve the Lord with his gifts and talents, is right under the surface. And he looks for, and he has some amazing gifts that you don't really see until you get to know him.
Yeah. So kind of recap, just keep your kids in church, never give up, have great mentors. Those things really helped y'all.
Buy into the idea that it's going to be work someday.
It's going to be work someday.
I think Hollywood has really thrown a curveball. It's all riding on the horses on the beach and staying at the hotel, and it's.
I think even social media does that.
And it does, and I think sometimes kids, young couples, even old couples, go in with the idea there's not going to be some work involved, and there is. And,
Sacrifice,
and
like,
and
like
you,
y'all had to do.
well, I mean, there's tons of couples have done it, and like I said, the mentors, the people that you learn from, we've been blessed with some good Christian leaders who've given us some insights into things, and I take them all. You know, I'm all learning. You're continually working. At our age, you're
That's
still
great.
doing it. It doesn't go away.
You
That-
never stop learning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if y'all need to, if you're a young couple like, and you got kids and you're struggling and you need somebody to talk to about walking through stuff, you should think about seeing Kathy and Steve at church and come say hi to them. But I appreciate doing the been there, done that, and you sharing y'all's story about raising kiddos and sacrifice and a beautiful 42 years of marriage. And you good thing you went to pick up a person from the airport.
Yeah. Yes, and I told the story the way she likes it.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Well, thanks.
Thank you very
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you.